Welcome to the Browns Insider Show here on cleveland.com. I'm Joey Morona. The Johnny Manziel era begins as he gets his first start for the Browns this Sunday against the Bengals. Let's bring in our Browns beat reporter, Mary Kay Cabot, via Skype. Mary Kay, are you there?
I'm here. How you doing, Joey?
Good. How are you? Well, MK, no real surprise here. Johnny Manziel is starting. Did Coach Mike Penn have any other choice?
You know what? I don't think so. Not with the way things have been going. Speed to his fourth center. However, I think at this point they needed to do something to try to jumpstart the offense and show they're willing to do whatever it takes to win this football game.
Do you think, Mary Kay, that this change maybe is a week late, that he should have done it against the Colts?
You know, I do kind of think that he should have done it against the Colts. I understand why they didn't do it against the Colts because, at that point, it seemed like, maybe there was still some chance for redemption. Maybe he could somehow find a way to generate some offense and get things going. So it might be a week late, but I do understand the thinking.
Now, last week, Joe Thomas, said that going to Manziel might give off a, playing for next year kind of vibe. How about now?
Well, you know what? Even Joe said after the game, when he was asked afterwards, what would you say this week? And he just kept on saying, well, I think so. I think I would say the same thing. You could tell that he knew at this point that it just wasn't going the way they needed it to. The other statistic, of course, to look at is 21 takeaways by the defense over the last 8 games. The offense has converted only 3 of those into touchdowns. Brian Hoyer now has only 11 touchdown passes and 12 interceptions. So it just wasn't going in the right direction at all. And I think most of the guys on the team probably felt that a change could be warranted.
All right, let's talk about Brian Hoyer. I mean, he had such a pretty good start to the season. He played well in Cincinnati, who their opponent is this week. But these last 4 weeks, no touchdowns, 7 or 8 interceptions. What has been the difference for Hoyer these last several weeks?
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on. First of all, in this past game, when you look at it again, I do think there are issues with Josh Gordon. I think they've played way better teams and way better defenses. That has a lot to do with it right there. I mean, when you look at the teams that they were beating for a while, you're talking about teams that now really have 2 victories and 11 losses. So there are a number of those on the docket. So that's one thing. Losing center Alex Mack did not help him at all. And then this past game, Miles Austin being out and Gary Barnidge being out, those guys were making some big plays for him and were very, very productive. Just a lot of things, not the least of which was playing better football teams.
All right, the way Hoyer has spoken lately, when asked about the possible switch, he's always remained steadfast in the confidence in himself. But yesterday it seems like he kind of threw some of his opponents under the bus. What do you make of the way Brian Hoyer has reacted so far to the possible switch and now switch to Johnny Manziel?
Well, I think that Brian recognized as of yesterday that it was going to be over for him, and I think he wanted to tell the truth. And his truth is that there were a lot of other things going on, and if guys could have come forth and made plays in that game, that the results would have been different. Now, yes, he had some bad throws. There's no denying that. But there were also some drop passes, and including the one on one of the last plays of the game by Josh Gordon downfield there. If he catches that ball, you're either in field goal range or something better happens there. So I do think that Brian has some points there that guys weren't able to step up. And then, again, Miles Austin's, most of his catches were going for first downs. And I think it really hurt not to have him. He's a go-to clutch guy. He can make a catch in traffic. And I think Brian really missed having him out there. So I don't really fault Brian for what he said. I think he can see the writing on the wall now that that they're not only are they going in a different direction right now for the rest of the season, but that his career here could be over because he's going to be a free agent, and he has no idea if they'll want him back as a backup, and he, I'm sure, wants to go see if he can find a starting job somewhere. So I think it was time for him to say, hey, I'm going to defend myself and say it like I feel it is.
Now, if you go back to training camp, Brian Hoyer and Johnny Manziel, they never seemed to be best friends. They never seem to be really warm and fuzzy with each other. What do you think of that relationship, and how is it going to play out with Hoyer as the backup now?
Well, you know what? I think Mike Pettin kind of set forth those parameters for them in training camp when he said he didn't want it to be warm and fuzzy. He wanted there to be, this kind of tension between them. But I don't know if that was the right strategy. I don't know if it was a great idea to put that out there. I think it would have benefited both guys if they if they had been able to develop a little bit more of a relationship. I think the vibe would have been a little bit better. I think maybe Brian might not have, in these last few weeks, maybe he wouldn't have had to be looking over his shoulder as much if he felt like they were a little bit more allies than adversaries. So, you know what, if I had one thing that I wished that Mike would have done over, that's one of them. It would be, don't set these guys up to be butting heads all the time.
Do you think, though, that Hoyer could be a good backup and help Manziel when he sees something? Would he tell him, hey, you should have done this, you shouldn't have done that?
Well, Brian is a true professional, and I know he really loves being here in the city of Cleveland, and he's got his family here, and his wife's from here, and her family is from here. So I do know that he likes that whole scenario. So, I suppose there's a chance that that if he doesn't find something he likes better, that he could end up here as a backup. But I don't even know for sure at this point if the Browns would want him to be the backup. I don't know how they feel about the situation. Sometimes when you have your starter, things don't work out and they become your backup, it's not necessarily the best case scenario. Johnny might be better off having, someone that that didn't get their heart broken in this situation. And the truth of the matter is Brian Hoyer's heart has got to be broken right now, in the same way that Colt McCoy's heart was broken when they went to the other number 22 pick, Brandon Whedon, ahead of him. It's, this is your team. You put your heart and soul into it. You give it everything you have. And then before you know it, they're putting that first round pick in ahead of you. And it's just a really tough situation.
Now, Brian Hoyer is probably going to get some feelers in the free agent market. Probably not going to be here. We could probably, it's probably safe to say that. But what do you think Brian Hoyer's attitude is going to be the next, 3 or 4 weeks? And do you think there might be a situation where, he becomes such a malcontent that the Browns, may want to cut ties with him before next season?
No, I mean, that's not Brian at all. I mean, Brian was raised right. He's got a great background. I mean, he went to St. Ignatius. He's got, he is as great a character guy as you are ever going to run across. He would never be a malcontent. He's a team guy. He'll do whatever needs to be done, and he will help Johnny Manziel out in any way that he can. He knows that it's Johnny's job now, and he is for the team. He's not only that, he's a Cleveland Browns fan, and he has been his whole life. So, no, it's not going to get to that point. Again, what might happen is, that he'll probably become a free agent and end up having to go somewhere else. But for these 3 weeks, he will be a true pro.
All right, let's talk about Johnny Manziel. We saw him against Buffalo provide a spark late in the game. Yes, it was against a soft Buffalo defense. But what did you see in that game that would give you hope for this week against Cincinnati?
Well, you know what? I think he can make plays with his feet. He can make plays with his arm. When guys talk about Johnny Manziel, and fans will be surprised themselves too, he's got a strong arm. Even John Greco said he's got a cannon arm. You would be very, very surprised. I mean, just looking at him, you wouldn't think of that. And when you think of the fact that he is a dual threat quarterback, his arm gets overlooked a little bit. So I really do think that people will be surprised in that regard. What he has to be able to do is read defenses and know what he's looking at. He's got to be able to make those play calls. It's going to happen so fast. And Marvin Lewis, who, by the way, called him a midget last night in a radio interview, you can find that story on cleveland.com. They're going to come at him. They're going to come at him with everything that they have. And they're going to try to confuse him. They're going to give him different looks, and the Bengals have a good defense. So, this is going to be very interesting, and he's got a brand new center, too, who's only made one start in his NFL career. So, you might expect that there will be perhaps another fumbled snap exchange just based off the snap count and that kind of stuff.
Now, you mentioned his arm strength. What about his accuracy? We saw that Brian Hoyer had some accuracy problems, particularly in that game against the Colts. What do you think about Manziel's accuracy?
Well, traditionally, he's been very accurate, and he's been a better pocket passer than people have given him credit for when he was at Texas A&M. However, you don't know what a quarterback's accuracy is going to be until you see them under pressure by an NFL defense. So that's the whole key. Anybody can be accurate when the pocket is clean and when you have plenty of time to throw. It's when you're rushed and when you have to throw on the run. Now, I think he can throw well on the run. So that's what we're going to have to see. That's where he seems to be, or was at his best when he was in college, when he was having to zip around and make those improvisational plays on the run. So guys are going to have to be ready. The receiver's going to have to be on their toes, and the line is going to have to try to be able to block for a mobile quarterback now, and it's just going to be a whole different feeling.
Now, during the preseason, there was some talk, about some difficulty Manziel may have had with the playbook. There was some, talk perhaps that he wasn't quite sure of the play calls against the Bills. But, 14 weeks in, do you think he's comfortable enough with the playbook at this point?
Well, you know what? I mean, they will pare it down for him to the point where he has a package that he feels he can work with. They will ask him, what plays do you like? And he will give them a list of things that he feels comfortable doing, and he will hone in on that. Against the Bills, he was thrown in there with somebody else's game plan and one that he hadn't practiced much during the week. This week, he will get all of the reps, all the snaps right from the start, and he will go in there very, very prepared. And I remember asking Billy Wynn about this last week, and he said he practices against him every day in practice. He said he's getting better every single week. Kyle Shanahan will have him ready to play a football game. And we asked Mike Pettin about that yesterday, and he said he absolutely will be ready. So they will have him as ready as they can be. And we've seen Kyle Shanahan get other guys ready for football games very quickly. We've seen Kirk Cousins get ready to play a football game against the Cleveland Browns and win it. So Kyle can handle these kind of situations, and he can also handle a read option, run-oriented quarterback.
I was going to mention that. So Kyle Shanahan, of course, is the architect of the RG3 breakout season of a couple of years ago. We saw the pistol offense, the zone read. Do you expect to see a lot of that Sunday against the Bengals?
Yeah, I do think you'll see a lot of that. You have to play to a quarterback's strengths. And again, it's not like this isn't Kyle Shanahan's first rodeo with this kind of quarterback. He knows all about it. He knows how to be successful at it, calling the plays. He knows how to design them. And Johnny knows how to run them. So, it could end up being the perfect marriage. Now, is it going to look beautiful right from the first time out? You know what? No one knows. It's the great unknown. I think they've probably seen enough of him in practice to feel that he is up to speed enough to go out there and get the job done. Because I will tell you that there is one reason why they made this decision, and that's because they feel like they can generate more offense, more points, and win the football game. They didn't do this so that they can see who Johnny Manziel is for the last 3 games of the season.
All right. Of course, we know that rookie quarterbacks rarely do well right away. We've seen Blake Bortles struggle. We've seen Teddy Bridgewater struggle. So what are some reasonable expectations for Manziel these last, 3 games?
Well, you know what? I think Browns fans will see the benefit and the wisdom in sitting Johnny down for these first how many ever games, because you know what? You do learn something, just by being in the classroom. You learn something from being on the sidelines. You can learn a little bit by watching and then be ready to be thrown in there. He knows he's more ready now than he would have been the first week of the season, or the 3rd week, or the 5th week. He realizes it. He's been studying game plans. Perhaps not enough. I mean, you never really know what it takes to prepare for an NFL game until once you're out there, and then you realize how fast it goes, how confusing it can get, just how much you're going to get rushed and blitzed and all those kind of things. So I think he's going to find out very quickly that you can never study too much. That even though you think you have time to do this or that now, you really have to buckle down and pour your heart and soul into this if you want to be successful.
Do you think that Johnny Manziel will start for the rest of the way, or does he have a certain length of a leash on him?
Well, no. I mean, I think they made this decision. They gave it a lot of thought. I don't think they would have done it if they thought it was just a 1-game thing. And so, yes, I absolutely think that, that they did this with every intention of having it be for the rest of the season. And I think the only way that he would come out of there at this point now probably is if he were injured. And, that's something that you have to worry about a little bit with Johnny because he's not the biggest guy in the world. And when you start running around like that, guys are going to go after you. And there's this extra little, people love to hate on Johnny Manziel. People either love him or they hate him, but defensive guys love to get their shots in at Johnny. So, I think we saw that with Kyle Williams in Buffalo when he flattened him on that one play. So he's going to have to be very nimble and very quick, and the line's going to have to do a great job protecting him. He's going to have to get the ball off as quickly as he can.
All right, last question before we let you go. Do you see any scenario in which Johnny Manziel isn't the starting quarterback for the Browns in 2015?
Well, at this point, no. I think he will be the starting quarterback for the Browns in 2015. Yes, I think he will.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, Northeast Ohio Media Group, Browns beat writer. Thanks for joining us. We're going to bring in Dennis Manoloff here in a second. Once again, Johnny Manziel has been named the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns against the Cincinnati Bengals at First Energy Stadium this Sunday and presumably the rest of the season. Let's bring in Dennis Manoloff he's not ready. So we've got Johnny Manziel going up against the Bengals this Sunday, 1 o'clock, First Energy Stadium. The game will be on Fox, and no doubt fans will be wondering to see how Manziel does in his first NFL start. He's got a new center, as Mary Kay Cabot alluded to. Josh Gordon is still not up to speed, so plenty of challenges. Plus, the Bengals, since they lost against the Browns a few weeks ago, have played very well. They are in first place in the AFC North. So the Browns still technically in the thick of a playoff race. They'll need some help from the Ravens, the Steelers, the Dolphins. But Johnny Manziel now will get his opportunity to play for the Browns and start. We've got Dennis Manoloff here joining us via Skype. D-Man, are you there?
Yes, sir, Joey. Can you see me?
Hey, how are you?
Hey, pretty good.
All right, D-Man, I was just talking to Mary Kay. I was asking her this question. I'll ask you. The Browns are still technically in the thick of a playoff race. Is it bonkers to switch to a rookie quarterback at this point, or is it a no-brainer?
I think the time had come to make the switch, regardless of whether Manziel was a rookie or not, because Brian Hoyer simply had not played well and was in this four-game slump and did not play well at all on Sunday against Indianapolis. You can make a strong case that he cost them the victory. So, regardless of Manziel's status on the roster, I felt like a move needed to be made. I mean, talk about a rookie. I mean, sure, it's more of a gamble because you don't know what you have because he hasn't played anything meaningful. But no, I don't think it's something that you don't do in this situation. I think Pettin made the right decision at this moment in time.
Now, last time the Browns played the Bengals, they ran all over them. Brian Hoyer, that was actually his last good game that he played. So what's the game plan to beating the Bengals on Sunday with Manziel now at quarterback?
I have no idea, Joey, to be quite honest, because I don't know what Johnny Manziel brings to the table. We don't know really what kind of a pro quarterback he is. We saw him, in a couple of plays, and then we saw him in a couple of series against Buffalo, but that's been it. So I don't know how the game plan is going to unfold. I don't know what kind of plays they're going to run for Manziel. How many design rollouts are there going to be? How many bootlegs? How many times is Manziel going to leave the pocket and think he can run? Will that be a wise decision, unwise decision? So with Johnny Manziel at the helm, I don't know what the key to beating the Bengals is regarding the quarterback position other than the usual, take care of the ball. Don't get loose with the football. Don't pick it up. Don't get it picked off. Don't fumble it. And obviously you got to hope you get help from every other area of the team.
Now we saw, of course, Kyle Shanahan, was the offensive coordinator with RG3 his first year in Washington when RG3, played really well. Do you think we'll see a lot of, pistol formations, zone read type of plays?
That's a great question, Joey. I can't wait for Sunday for so many reasons, and one of them is to get an idea of how much Johnny Manziel has actually absorbed. How much they feel like they can install with Johnny Manziel at quarterback. And this will be the first true indicator of how much he's learned since training camp and since mini camps and whatnot. Because, you know, if Shanahan feels like he has a tremendous grasp of this offense, then he's probably going to run an assortment of plays. If he doesn't feel like Manziel has a good grasp of the offense and only really has a feel for a set number of plays, then they're going to try to go with that. But it's all up to Manziel and how much he has learned to this point in his development.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. We heard during training camp that, you know, Johnny Manziel may have had trouble learning the playbook. There was some talk in the Buffalo game that he wasn't sure of the play calls. But do you think he'll be ready for Sunday, or do you think they'll, you know, just give him maybe 10 or 15 plays to work with and, you know, go off of that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I hate to say this because I have no idea. You know, I'm not trying to dodge, Joey, but I have no idea how advanced or how not advanced Johnny Manziel is in his preparation. I don't think anybody other than Manziel and Shanahan and Pettine do, you know, but my gut tells me that they're not going to try to make it super complicated regardless. They're going to try to give him plays that they know he can execute, that he's shown he can execute in practice. And, you know, I think they'll do the old keep it simple, stupid type of stuff, you know, just keep it simple and basic and make sure you can execute certain plays and not try to get too cute and too tricky. But the wild card, of course, is Manziel, known for his spontaneity, known for his creativity. How much is he going to be allowed to take that playbook and run with it?
Now, yeah, you mentioned, you know, what he's done in college. We've seen those highlight reels of him eluding tacklers, even hurdling people, and then finding wide open receivers somehow. Can an NFL quarterback do that?
Well, you know what? I was just thinking, Joey, a couple hours ago, I was watching a highlight reel of the Raiders against the 49ers. And you know how we look at the Oakland Raiders as being a bad team. They were incredibly fast on defense. And I know their defense isn't terrible. It's not as bad as their record. But it got me to think, and the Raiders defense was all over Colin Kaepernick, okay, who's considered a very elusive quarterback, a running type quarterback. And I'm thinking, man, the NFL speed is incredible. You know, it really, even for the bad teams, these guys are so fast. So you wonder, you know, is Manziel going to be able to outrun guys that he used to be able to? And I think the answer is, and more often than not, no. But if he picks the right spots and, you know, and figures it out on the fly, I'm sure he could make some gains out of nothing. But it's just amazing how fast the game is at the NFL level. And I think that's why you see running quarterbacks struggle after a while. Even the fast ones struggle after a while because eventually, you know, the D coordinators adjust. They pinch you in a little bit, and then the speed of the NFL defenses take over.
Now, you know, we're all familiar with Manziel's speed, you know, and his elusiveness. But you studied Manziel, you know, preparing for the draft, looked at his tape. What can you tell us about his accuracy and his arm strength?
Well, I thought Manziel made a lot of improvements from, you know, his previous year, his Heisman year in college. You know, I thought he did a nice job of not revamping his game, but developing his game under the tutelage of the great quarterback guru, George Whitfield Jr. out in California, to the point where last season, his final season in college, I thought he was a better pocket passer. He was a better downfield thrower. He was reasonably accurate on those type of throws. He's got an arm. There's no question about it. But that doesn't mean that he was automatically becoming, you know, the greatest pocket passer in the world, but he made significant improvements. And, you know, I think that helped his stock, and it helped sort of eliminate some of that doubt or cut into some of that doubt that he's nothing but a scrambling quarterback. Now, will he be able to survive in an NFL pocket? We don't know. I mean, nobody knows, and we'll begin to find out in earnest on Sunday.
You know, the Bengals are a tough opponent. Obviously, they're in first place. The Browns beat up on them in Cincinnati 5 weeks ago, but they've played very well since, as I've mentioned. So what are some reasonable expectations for Manziel to have against this Bengals defense?
Well, you know, and that's the thing. It's interesting because the previous 2 times the Browns have played the Bengals, they've beaten them, and Brian Hoyer played well, okay? And now, Brian Hoyer did not play, and he didn't have to throw for 400 yards, but he played well. And so when you look at what Hoyer did to be successful against the Bengals, it was not turn the ball over, execute the basic passes, get help from the running game, have your receivers not drop balls. So I think the same ingredients are in play for Johnny Manziel to have success against the Bengals. That being said, I don't think the Bengals would feel as confident trying to trick up their defenses and confuse Hoyer as they will Sunday, I would assume, trying to confuse Manziel. Because they probably figured Hoyer can sort through it quicker because he's been around and he knows the game better just by experience. And so you're probably going to see the Bengals gamble more and show Manziel a bunch of different looks, especially at the line of scrimmage. Maybe try to get him to think that 7 guys are rushing when actually only 4 of them or 3 of them are going to be. You know, bait him into the classic rookie mistakes that I don't think they were necessarily comfortable trying against Brian Hoyer.
All right, Brian Hoyer and Johnny Manziel, they have not been BFFs, you know, since training camp through this quarterback competition. How do you think that dynamic is going to be with Hoyer, you know, who has confidence in himself and thinks he should be the starter? Do you think Hoyer is going to be a good soldier and be a good backup?
I would hope so, you know, and, you know, even if Hoyer doesn't think that for some reason, and I'm not sure that he does or he doesn't, but even if Hoyer doesn't think that Manziel was a good soldier as the backup, I would hope Hoyer has enough professionalism to support Manziel, even though Hoyer's got to be bitterly disappointed and he realizes that his career is hanging in the balance and big paychecks are hanging in the balance and potentially were washed away by this decision and by his slump. So hopefully he can put all that aside and he can help Manziel as much as possible, and Manziel will be receptive to it. Hopefully Johnny Manziel turns to Brian Hoyer and says, all right, Brian, what did you do? What plays did you make that had success against the Bengals? Tell me what you see from their defense and give me as much guidance as you can. So I expect that to be the case because, you know, Brian Hoyer is a class act when it's all said and done. And so I think he will step up and be the best, best backup he could be, I guess.
All right, 3 games left. Cincinnati, at Carolina, at Baltimore. Obviously, the Browns think that they could win some of these games with Johnny Manziel at quarterback. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made the switch. Do you think they could win any of these 3 remaining games with Johnny Manziel?
Well, I sure hope so. You know, I mean, look, the Browns weren't the only team that liked Manziel, coming out of the draft or coming into the draft. And, I mean, yes, he did slip down the board, but there were teams that liked him. There were teams that believe in him. And even the teams that gave him a second-round grade or even a third-round grade, it still doesn't mean you can't succeed as an NFL quarterback. So I don't, I'm not sitting here going, all right, Manziel's in. Now the Browns are going to go 0-3 and, go into a, further spiral and lose 6 of their last 7. So I have hope that he can win the games. The Browns should have confidence against the Bengals. Their defense, the Browns defense is playing well for the most part. Obviously you go to Carolina, that's going to be a tough game because Carolina is amazingly still in it in their division. And then you finish at Baltimore, which will be a tough game. So I think you perhaps temper expectations, but you don't go in expecting them to go 0-3. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of looking forward to this because of the fact that the Browns are still on the fringe of the playoffs. and these games do have meaning. So you get a little extra, sort of look at Manziel here. It's not like Manziel's coming in and the Browns are 2-11 and they're just playing out the string against bad teams. You're going to be facing 3 playoff contenders, and the Browns are still alive. So it should be a really good test.
All right, the Johnny Manziel begins this Sunday at First Energy Stadium against the Cincinnati Bengals. Dennis Manoloff, thanks for joining us. That's going to do it for our Browns Insider Show. Stay tuned to cleveland.com for continuing coverage of Johnny Manziel and the Cleveland Browns.